In many parts of the world, leaders are accorded preferential treatments. From their meals, clothes, and other necessities, heads of state in particular are given the finest options. But this is where Ghana's 10th president, Professor John Evans Atta Mills, distinguished himself.
What do you want from me?
According to many of those who worked with the erudite law professor, he was an extremely modest fellow who was opposed to all forms of wastage and extravagance.
Look, here is somebody that, look, he wasn't taking any per diem. His pay didn't come to him. Here was somebody that on so many trips that he could have gone. And you know there are so many people around power who would want the president to travel so that they could also travel with the president, get per diem and then see the world. I said, no, I wouldn't go on this trip. Will this trip provide me with schools? Would it provide me with roads? Would it provide me with boreholes? If not, I'm not going on it.
We have a country where only the privileged few are enjoying, while the generality of the people are wallowing in poverty. This must come to an end.
The new president of the Republic of Ghana at 7th January 2009 told State Protocol he didn't want a state banquet. And after that, I cannot remember President Mills ever having a state banquet. What he had yearly would be a cocktail with a diplomatic corps, which is standard procedure. But for a state banquet, then the only other one also will be July 1st, when he's feting, the old guards, the men, the veterans, men and women who have served the nation well. That's about it. But for his own personal gratification, there was no state banquet. In fact, there's another story, another one, akin to this one. So he was living in his residence at Regimanuel Gray Estates. So he's sworn in on the 7th. By the time he gets home, State Protocol goes to offload maybe I don't know how to describe, but assorted drinks, liquor, soft, beer, name. Guess what the president did? He asked State Protocol to come back and pick every single bottle from his house. He didn't want it. And he told me, if they bring this to my house, do you know how much has gone, how much of it has gone elsewhere? I'm not going to lead like this.
Koku Ahindoho worked closely with Professor Mills as the Director of Communication at the Presidency. In recollecting his memories about Professor Mills, humility was one of the traits he strongly emphasized.
After about 1 week, he moved and made the castle his residence. You know why? Because he said, having lived on the Spintex Road for so many years, and the dense nature of the traffic, he didn't see why he should inconvenience motorists and be using his motorcade in the morning, afternoon, evening. Where is even the space for them now to be making space to be going off the road for you, the president, to pass with your motorcade? One thing you couldn't stand, and sometimes it happens when you're driving the president and you're driving against traffic. You would have to move to the other side of the lane, the road, because that's the only way you can get through. And that thing used to really hurt him. How do I say it? He had a heart for the nation.
I always admired him. Any opportunity I get to go to the Internal Revenue Service, I'll make a point to seek an appointment to greet him. Sometimes he'll be on his way, how you rush closer so he can notice you. Oh, Ali, how are you doing? Are you coming to see me? I said, no, I'm coming to. Okay, have a nice day. And he was just welcoming. And for me, one big attribute of his, I would say, has influenced me a lot, his humility. Can you imagine Commissioner of IRS at that time and a professor? And who am I? But here I am. You go to him, he gives you audience. I'm not a partner of the firm. I'm not even a manager. But you could see how he could come that low, interact with you, give you the motivation and inspiration. And so I think that he has shaped me in terms of my attitude, my quest for knowledge, and how I also want to relate to people. I always want to be as humble as I have seen Prof exhibit.
Mills's defining virtues were not only limited to his honesty. He was a man who also had an unfettered commitment to God, despite his official and work commitments.
He's a peculiar person. I think we miss him seriously. Anything that he wanted to do, he wanted to commit it into prayer. So when he was traveling, sometimes he wanted some of us to be with him and be praying with him. Another time he asked me to accompany him to Ethiopia, and I went with him. Every dawn by 5 a.m. I had to be with him for Bible study and prayer before he would go to the meeting. And that one was every day. And his love for God was amazing.
The word I would use is incomparable. Very, very honest, faithful, down to earth. What are the adjectives? Very level-headed. He's someone that you would like to be in his company all the time because he will not do anything to hurt you. Even if you say or do anything to hurt you, he's the first person to tell you that I understand, I forgive you. Right? And you have no choice but to apologize to him. He's that kind of person and very generous. Very, very generous. Can you imagine that when he became president and I, as a retired professor here, anytime I visited him, he would tell me, Kofi, JAI, that's all, baby. That was the kind of person he was.
But where did all of this begin? The fancy scholar, Professor Mills, was born on the 21st day of July 1944 at Takwa in the western region of Ghana. He was the first son of an educator, John Atta Mills Sr. and Mercy Dawson Amwa. His ties with his family and relatives was amongst his priorities.
We all revolved around him. He was my mother's favorite. He went everywhere with my mom. He communicated well with my father, all of us siblings. He made sure that he visited all of us. If he didn't visit you physically, he will call you. He was somebody who kept in touch with all of us.
As the second of 7 siblings, Mills had his first fill of the classroom at the Huni Valley Methodist Primary School and then the Commander Methodist Middle School, respectively. He then proceeded to the Achimota School, the University of Ghana, and the London School of Economics and Political Science, where he obtained a master's degree in law. Later on, he earned a PhD in law at the School of Oriental and African Studies of Law, University of London. At the University of Ghana, sports was one of his areas of interest.
From day one, he was in the Hall 11 for the football. What was his position? I think midfield. He wasn't a striker. Midfield, but he could play defense. He was also an excellent hockey player. Cricket, but Legon wasn't well known, or cricket was not very active those days. But those two sporting activities, he was very much involved. In fact, the current president, His Excellency Kufuor, joined us in our second year, and both of them were playing for Legon Hall. But Professor Mills was playing for the university. He was in the University 11.
Professor Mills had his doctoral thesis in the field of taxation and economic development at a very young age of 27. Professor Asumening attests to some of his exemplary traits.
Mills had a good name on campus. I wonder whether he has enemies on campus. You may not be in the same political party with him, but as a person, you cannot fault him for anything. You know, he's not corrupt, an upright Christian, very kind, and very jovial, great sense of humor. I don't know whether you experience, you know, we had our jokes and so on, and sometimes whenever we meet, we go over. That's a way of
funny joke.
Yes, settling down and so on. So, but he has great sense of humor. So I don't think anyone will come to me to say that, please go and talk to your friend, he's done this or. The point is that he was very intelligent.
We would want to adopt a set of policies which will ensure high economic growth.
Mills's intellect and mental prowess did not only earn him awards and laurels. Indeed, he was able to effect changes in Ghana's tax regime, an account his former speechwriter, Koku Ahintohu, describes as exceptional. For 25 years, he lectured at the University of Ghana, where he once attempted to become the Vice-Chancellor of the nation's premier university. It was no wonder that Professor Mills served as the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service from 1988 to 1993, a role he discharged with admirable diligence.
My interactions with him and the Internal Revenue Service, the reforms came by way of some of the units he established in the revenue to ensure that taxpayers had a service rendered unto them. For example, you realize that he expanded a lot of the offices across the country in the quest to meet one of the critical attributes of a good tax system, that the tax office should be as close as possible to the taxpayer. And then there were various amendments that were always being made to the tax law to address challenges that came up in the tax administration system. And the idea of trying to simplify the processes for taxpayers are some of the contributions he brought to bear on tax administration. And remember, it was his time we had the first reforms of tax in 1986, the first revenue reforms. Remember, we used to have the Central Revenue Department, which was a department, Ministry of Finance. There was the Customs, Excise and Preventive. It used to be Customs Division of the Ministry of Finance. So these were carved out to the Internal Revenue Service, which he came to head, and then the Customs, Excise and Preventive Service. So from there, all reforms that have happened comes by way of his time. And so I think that a lot has been done.
But Professor Mills was not only a flaming light in academia and public service alone. His touch of impact blazed through his domestic affairs as well. Kofi Sam Atta Mills, a structural engineer and son of the professor, speaks of the impact his father had on him.
Sometimes there were challenges, especially when I was in the UK. You know, being able to get him at the right time, his schedules, not being able to. But I mean, I know for a fact, and this I can say, he never missed my birthday. Every birthday he would call and make sure. I remember making the decision to go and study engineering. My father actually wanted me to do law. So discussing with him and telling him that I don't know if I want to do law, and I think I want to actually go into, initially I said to him architecture, and then I changed my mind and said, and he was very upset. He goes, no, I think he wanted me to study something that he could assist me with, because of his background. He wanted me to also follow suit so that he could, if I needed any help or something, I could. And I was, rebelling against him. Said, no, Daddy, I want to go and do engineering. That's where my heart is at. I'm good with numbers, so I want to go into engineering. And, and we fell out for a bit because he felt I wasn't listening to him, But genuinely, he was part of my upbringing. He would make sure that I was sufficient. Of course, as a young man, we had our own misunderstandings and stuff. But genuinely, he was very integral and very part of, almost every decision that I made.
In December 2006, Professor Mills was overwhelmingly elected.
My father was a very strict person. Extremely strict. He wasn't the spanking type, but he would give you an eye, and that was worse than spanking. And if he was upset with you, you would know, you would feel it, And he isn't. His level of discipline would not come in a physical form as, like I said, spanking you, but the decisions he would take and how he would relate to you would make you understand. And even how he would speak to you would make you understand that you are crossing the boundaries. So he was very firm. He was very, very firm with his decisions and in his form of discipline.
Sam says he enjoyed the privilege of being the vice president's son. According to him, even though his young mind could not relate with the fine details of politics and the presidency, his young heart did not miss the excitement of being the VIP's little boy.
I was pretty young. I think in '96 I was just about 5 years or 6 years old. And then, so I was in primary school at the time. And of course, at that age, you don't understand the capacity of who he has become. So I was just this, young boy running around, playing in the grass. I go to school with my backpack, and I remember, back then, when you go to school, they have assembly. So in the mornings, all the kids will line up, and then the teachers will address them and all those things. And I remember Professor Afu will drop me at school. Even my auntie Efe will drop me at school before she goes to. She was teaching at Ola Teachers Training College, and she would drop me before she goes to school. And as soon as the car gets there, the whole assembly would pause, and then everybody would start chanting, "Vice President, Vice President." And she would be so shy, and I would just be living in the fame, like, hey, everybody.
As a Democrat, I acknowledge the Electoral Commissioner declaration, and I therefore congratulate once more Professor John Evans Atta Mills on his election.
But soon, the reality dawned on him.
I remember in 2008, I was in school, and he invited me to come to Ghana. He'd been trying to get me to come to Ghana for a very long time, I should say. I think when I left to go to the UK, I wasn't really interested in coming back to Ghana. So my dad was always like, if you come to Ghana, I was like, nope, I'm not coming to Ghana. I like it here. I'm going to stay in the UK. So 2008, he invited me to come to Ghana, and I was rebelling as always. And then he says, look, just come for a weekend. I need you in Ghana for a weekend. So I said, fine, one weekend, I'm coming. I'm coming on a Friday with Virgin. I'm leaving on a Monday with British Airways, and I'm out. So I came, and then he made me follow him on his campaign trail. So, and that's when things started making, like, I was starting to understand. I was like, wow, like, what is this, the whole crowd and the convoy. And I think we went to Ejumako in the central region. and you know, driving through we even drove through like remote areas to go and meet people, and the way people were, you know, adoring him and throwing themselves at him and asking him that you should come and save us, and you know, and it started to dawn on me. It was like a mirage. And I was like, wow, like, is this the same person I've been talking on phone, telling him my peace of mind? You know, and this is how they value him here. So when after that campaign trail, I went back to the UK. I went to school, and like the whole time I was back in the UK, I was like, wow. And then even when I met, you know, people who knew who my father was, and they were discussing, hey, your father, do you think he'll win the elections and stuff? I was like, wow, like people even know him here. You know, they understand who he is, and you know. So then I had to start adjusting to understand more about him and the capacity in which he's in.
In their usual father-to-son engagements, he told some of the demands of his status as a president's son. From there, it was a seamless rapport between the UK-based structural engineer and Ghana's 10th president, Professor Mills.
And I remember this so clearly. I came to Ghana, I was picked up from the airport, and then they took me straight to the castle. And then the next morning, he called me to come to his office, because I came in very late on British Airways. So I came in, I went to my room to sleep at the castle. And then the next morning, I didn't wake up early because I was very tired. So he told them that they should make sure that I was okay. But when I'm done with everything, I should come to his office. So I went to his office, and he was there with a man, I think his name is Nia Modako. And then he sat me down in front of him, and then he literally just said to me, Kofi, welcome to Ghana, and I'm glad that you made a decision to come. But now I'm here as president of Ghana, and you are here as the son of the president of Ghana. You cannot go out there and you know, you had to literally tell me that when you're going out, you must go with security, you must not say hello to people, don't trust anybody, you have to eat in a certain type of way, you have to address people in a certain type of way, you have to carry yourself in a certain type of way. You know, whatever happens to me has a direct effect on you.
Never thought about getting involved in politics. He thought about helping as many people as he could, doing the public good. But there was a time that he had a trip to, I think it was Cote d'Ivoire, and he has some friends who are still around who could testify to that. There was a beggar sitting by the side of the street, and then when the guy was asking for alms from money from everybody. He was the only one out of the group who gave him some money. And then when he gave him the money, the guy called him back and said, one day you'll be president. And he said it, and then the other guys asking, what did he tell you? He said, one day. He said, one day I'll be president. And they laughed it off, and then they went away. It was after he had become president that some of the friends came in and reminded him of it. Hey, you remember when we went to Cote d'Ivoire, this thing happened? That wasn't his thought, to get involved in politics. But he went to Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute. He was somebody who cared about the neighbor, and he did it very well.
But basically, it just had to do with the fact that Professor Mills was head of IRS, Kwesi Botchwey was sector minister, finance, so IRS operating under finance. President Rawlings was president. And I think that it had to do with a friend of President Rawlings's, who came to see the president, and some concession, and so it's like, okay, finance minister, talk to the IRS man and let's see whether it's possible. Long and short, the IRS man said it was impossible. And so when the president invited him to the castle, his ability to look the president eyeball to eyeball and still insist that it wasn't possible for Rawlings, that was a mark of a man and a leader and somebody who knew what he wanted to do. So when his name popped up in 96 as the name of Professor Mills to be Jerry Rawlings' running mate, when he remembered that first encounter for him, Eureka, that was it. That was it. That was it. It didn't take him, he didn't have to, wonder who he was going to deal with. That first encounter just, flew back into the his frontal lobe, engulfed his whole mindset and thinking process, and I was like, yes, that's the man. And that's the story of how he accepted Professor Mills to be his running mate. And then, of course, he became vice president. And the story is there, it's out there how, as president and vice president, they had such a wonderful working relationship.
Even this evening, there were the people who thought that this rally was going to be rained off. No, the good Lord gave us the showers to cool the temperature.
In arriving at the decision to turn to politics, Mills, as always, and with all decisions, took the matter to God in prayer.
And from what I hear, the President Rawlings had an issue with his vice president then, and they needed to get somebody to run as his running mate. And I hear that it was on a Thursday or Friday afternoon. That was when Professor Hoy told President Rawlings that he knew of somebody who could run as a running mate with him. And then that was when, President Rawlings remembered that, yeah, the guy who's been criticizing me, right? That he needs to come and then help us run this country. So I hear that when he went to him on Friday, Prof, as usual, said no, he would not do it. They went to him the next day, he said he wouldn't do it. And then Sunday, he said he had to go to church. And then after that, he would think about it. But lo and behold, it was a very short time that they were able to convince him. And he was like, okay, he's already helping quite a lot of people. If he could come in as a vice president to help straighten a few things or to help as many people as he could, then he would do that. And then that was when he accepted and he became the vice president.
He respected President Rawlings even into the grave. Why do I say so? On at least 2 occasions, during the heat of the Funka game thing, when some young people thought that the best way to do politics was to hurl insults at President Mills, I was called by 2 senior party members on 2 different occasions to go after Rawlings. That was the catchphrase, go after Rawlings. So it's like, defend President Mills by going after Rawlings. I wasn't going to do it. Per my own upbringing, I wasn't going to do it. But why? I work for a president, so I had to go and report. I had to go and mention it to him. On all those occasions, Kweku, he advised me, and I quote him, Kweku, let nobody ever deceive you to insult Jerry Rawlings. The day you insult Jerry Rawlings, that's the end of your political career. The people who are telling to go after Jerry Rawlings, they have come to me for me to sack you, and I've refused. This is their new modus operandi. To get you to go after Rawlings, then they will run to me and come and say that, you see what Kwaku has done? The only thing which will appease Rawlings is that you sack Kwaku. So Kwaku, please, it's a trap. Never fall into that trap, whether I'm dead or alive, promise me.
Even though Mills had no prior political experience, he was able to generate a groundswell of support for the National Democratic Congress, the NDC. But the prestige of power could not change the meekness of Professor Mills, throughout his years in office.
You see, I don't believe politics or power changes anybody. Power allows you to exhibit to the whole world who you really are. So somebody who is not a good person but trying to hide it, wait till you give that person power or money. If you are good, wait till you give that person power or money, and you see that he will show the goodness. He never changed. He was somebody who was selfless, who was a hard worker. He thought, it was a privilege for that he got to serve the country. And just to tell you a little bit about Big Brother, he was somebody that he could have lived at his house, which is on Sprinters Road, and then come to work at the castle, because the presidential quarters over there was bad, extremely bad. It was so bad that when it rained, we had to put buckets in his room to collect water. That is how bad it was. Maintenance of the place was so bad. But I asked him several times, why don't you stay at Sprinters Road and then come to work every morning? He said no.
In the year 2000, Professor Mills had to shoulder a greater responsibility as the flag bearer of the National Democratic Congress.
Because when we lost the power in 2000, the Youth Forum was set up at Cuckoo Hill. I joined, and so my writing skills, my own talent, is what attracted President Professor Mills at the time. So he didn't need anybody to introduce me to him. You understand? It caught his attention. And so Kwaku, come and let's work. And hence the loyalty. I couldn't afford to be disloyal to him, because I didn't have any godfathers that I owed allegiance to.
Even though I know him at a distance, the way I got to meet him was when they were preparing for election. When the time he was elected, before he was elected, somebody approached me and asked me that he wanted me to be praying with him. The man is called Apostle Jude Hama. So by then I was in office as the moderator of the Global Evangelical Church. So the way I know prayer, I would not have very much time to be consistent with prayer. So what I did was, even though I was going to the house to pray with him, I found a team of 3 pastors from my church who were praying with him. They fasted every month. He gave them a place, a house, his house, one of his houses. They will go there and stay there for 3 days and fast. He will be with them all along, which is not common. Because some people, they will just ask you, pray for me or pray with me. You don't see them. But he will be with them all the 3 days as they were fasting and praying for the election. So once a while, I'll also go to the house and pray with him. Then when I was elected the second time to be the moderator of the Global Evangelical Church. In our church, you can hold office for 4 years. Then another 4 years you can be re-elected. So when I finished the first 4 years, they re-elected me. By then we had already started praying with him. So I invited him to the induction. First he said he would not be able to come. But that morning he just came he came to home. Then after everything, he called me and told me that he really wanted to give up standing as a president. But when he came to the church, God spoke to him that he should not give up, he should not step down. So his hope was rekindled at that church. That is how we became close. So we continued the prayers until he was finally elected by the grace of God. So when he was elected, that was not the end. He called me. Normally, I shy away from people. That's my character. I shy away from the limelight. I don't want to be around where everybody will be seeing me. So I don't talk much. I don't want to face the media and other things. But they come to me anyway, like you have come. And so he called me and I went. By then they had not moved to the castle. So when I went, he said, sit by me. When I sat down, he said, you brought me here. Don't forsake me.
When Mills became president in 2008, there was a lot of tension in the air, and some political pundits and observers urged him to deal with his detractors and crack the whip on those who had been unkind to the NDC during its years in opposition.
Mr. President, there is this thing going round that you are working towards the removal of the Chief Justice. How true is that rumor, and do you have any such intention to work for the removal of the Chief Justice? Thank you.
Please stay where you are. Look at my face very carefully. Listen to my voice. Do I look and sound like a cat hunter?
And you know, I keep saying, my father was a very quiet person. He was a man of very, very few words. He didn't really say much. And there were times he wouldn't necessarily come to me per se, but there were times I would raise issues with him. And he wouldn't say much. You know, I think my father, and I will say this now, I believe that he exercised a very high level of integrity. His level of integrity, I still haven't witnessed in my life. I wish and I even pray for even 1/10 of his level of integrity. But he was a very quiet person. He prayed a lot.
Officers of customs, you are Ghanaian citizens. You have to help us to build a better Ghana. But if this is the kind of behavior, this is the kind of attitude that you have, you are not helping us in any way.
Many saw this as a mark of weakness. His calm was remarkable. There was some improvement in the country's economy, with Ghana recording single-digit inflation.
He went to commission a magnificent story building edifice that ended the shift educational system in the Greater Accra region, where pupils will go in the morning and some will go in the afternoon. The University of Health and Allied Sciences, great monument in terms of public sector tertiary education. University of Energy and Natural Resources. Who can say that it's not President Mills? When you talk about the fact that even as vice president, it was under his watch that Get Fund was introduced and VAT introduced. I'm not surprised that when he became president, he utilized the Get Fund and the VAT, with magnificent, tact and finesse. The educational sector was his baby. Elimination of schools under trees. Look at them, heavy new school buildings all over the country, even new secondary schools. And a particular one I can make reference to is the Golu Senior High Secondary School in Sisala East. That is to honor the late President Ila Liman. In the health sector, this University of Ghana new medical school everybody's talking about, go and check the records. It's President Mills.
As president, Professor Mills built strong connections with the less privileged and dined with those who many in positions of power and influence would ignore.
He had a lot of people who called him, from Wachisela, Antimony in Medina, to Frimpong, who is a fitter, to a Jekum who Everybody, all these people had his private numbers, and they will call him. He had a friend, a lady who is now 103 years old, Accra Newtown, who will call almost every time that he's on TV. Hey, I don't like your haircut. Go and get a haircut. I don't like your shoes, your suit. Don't wear that again. Oh, that was a good one. Giving him, all kinds of information. So sometimes he will call me, put it on this channel, on this radio station. Why do you want to listen to it? Because somebody is there insulting me and I want to listen to it. I'm like, oh, if someone is insulting you, why would you do that? And there were quite a few times that he called reporters to explain things to them, not to get back at them. And they were shocked that he knew what he was talking about. He knew they were mentioning these. There were even some members of parliament who would say all kinds of things on the floor. And then later on they would run to him and then apologize to him and say, hey, Mr. President, you know that it's politics. Even though I didn't appreciate that much, he understood and he said, hey, he's trying to show to his party or to his voters that he could stand up to the president. So he took it, like the person that he is. Yes.
We also have a 3-tier pension scheme, which for the first time accommodates the needs of those in the informal sector under the National Pension Act of 2008.
But that was not all. In his bid to lessen the hardship on Guinean workers, Professor Mills implemented the single-spine salary structure. But the calm climate he introduced into the country's political atmosphere did not last for long. Soon, the president's health began to slowly fail him.
I knew about his health condition. Quite frankly, I didn't know it was life-threatening. Between his vice presidency and then presidency, we were meeting, and he started complaining that he was having some sensation in one of the ears. Was it left or right? I don't remember. Anyway, and initially, he's a good swimmer. Initially, he thought going to the swimming pool, water went into the ear. So he would come to the house and complain that, oh, Kofi, we feel then so komasu maya omba. Then the problem persisted. But then at that time, it did not hospitalize him. It did not require that he went into hospital. But somewhere along the line, he told me that his brother had arranged for him to go to South Africa. This was during the campaign. Was it this? Yes, the campaign for the presidential elections. So he went to South Africa and came back. Quite frankly, he did not tell me exactly what was wrong. He was feeling slightly better, but I knew the problem had not gone completely, but manageable. Yes.
I have just arrived from the US, where I undertook a regular medical checkup. Thank God, everything is okay.
In fact, for 3 weeks prior to that, I had spent every night with him in his room. I stayed with him. And the last night, I don't know what happened. He asked me to go home and then go and sleep. And I insisted I wanted to stay. He said, no, I'm fine. You know I'm fine. Just go. He had a sinus problem. But then at 5 a.m., he called me. And then he said, I think he blew his nose, and then there was some blood that came, and it was on the carpet. I rushed to the castle around that time, and I was with him throughout. The rest of it I would take to my grave.
The grave finally received Professor John Evans Atta Mills on Tuesday, 24th July 2012 at the 37 Military Hospital in Accra. It was a gloomy afternoon, a day many hearts were broken and completely torn asunder. For the first time in the history of the Republic, a sitting president had taken a flight to the journey of all men.
Whilst I was in Osu looking around and stuff, I heard and I was like, Ernest, are you sure the convoy is not gone? Because I'm hearing this sounds like our convoy. So I didn't think much about it. We were just getting things and whatever. And then I got a call from this man. Yeah, so the man had told me that he was coming. His name is Walanyo Agra. He was he was in charge of Sports Council, Ghana Sports Council or something like that. So he had told me that, so I told him that, oh, the old man will be traveling. So call the security guy, either Mr. Dade or Colonel Lawson, and then they'll let you know what time to come quickly. So I've told them to. So Mr. Agra calls me and says, come to the Accra Sports Stadium. So I thought that he had gone to see the old man and wanted to brief me or whatever. I got there to the Accra Stadium and he says the old man is gone. I said, oh, how? Like, I was supposed to go to it's too early. Like, they're leaving in late afternoon, so it's too early. So how can the old man? So I thought that he had even missed his appointment and that the old man had already left to go to the airport or something. He goes, no, the old man passed away. Then no, I just fell down. Like, I literally fainted. Like, I just left the man. Like, in my head, I just left him. We had lunch and I saw my auntie. My auntie didn't even catch, she didn't even reach Kaswato booth. She didn't even reach and she got a call that the brother had passed away. So that is how close, so for me, the whole thing was, it just happened so fast. It happened very fast. It happened very fast. I was in Osu before I could say Jack. Everything had just gone, like it was just there. I don't know how else to explain it. Literally. They called me, I went, the old man is gone. Oh, what do you mean? How? What do you mean he's gone? He's passed away. I mean, how? I just left him. You know.
And then were your eyes open where?
I was in the car. Like, I think Ernest had put me in the car and I think they were trying to find me or something like that. I literally, like, it just, I don't know what happened. Like, I literally just blacked out. I couldn't believe it. He said the old man just passed away. The old man had been rushed to 37. I don't know what happened. I was just out. It was Ernest that was telling me the story that as soon as he said, I just started going backwards and then he held me. And then they put me on the floor and then he carried me into the car because it wasn't okay for me to lie on the floor. So he put me on the back seat. And that was it. That was it. It just ended there.
How do you take that?
Your dad just passed away. The reason why you're here, the person you live with just passed away. All the plans we had, everything just went with him. Like, I was in this world alone. I'm here, I'm in Ghana alone. I don't know anybody else. I'm here alone, I'm cold. I'm cold, like, I don't have anybody to hug. I'm just there. I was numb, I came to my room, like I went upstairs to his room, nobody was there. He wasn't coming back. You can't describe that feeling. It's like you come out of your body. You know? You come out of your body and you don't even know what to think, because what's the first question you're going to ask? You don't have. It's. That's why I don't like talking about it, because it's too heavy.
John Evans Atta Mills has passed on, and the latest.
The press conveyed the sorrow with headlines which many received in denial. The streets were immersed in grief, and thousands of citizens across all the 10 administrative regions by then felt the brunt of the president's departure.
It was a big blow, but as a Muslim, we have always had the belief that it's God who gives life and it's God who takes life. And we also believe that we are on a journey, and then the destination is determined by Allah. So when He calls you, then that is it. And that's why people say that they wonder why Muslim funerals, no weeping, no crying. Our belief is that if you are weeping and crying, it's as if you disagree with God. It was God who brought the person to the earth, and He has called him. So if we know that he is being called to higher heaven, shouldn't we rather be rejoicing that he is being called to eternal rest? But yes, there is the pain, but we always have to know how to handle it. But I felt that, considering the fact that there were health challenges and all that, we all were hoping and praying he could be back fit and firm to continue. But unfortunately, our wishes could not see the light of day, because from where he was coming from, I expected him to be that healthy, to have carried his full 8-year term, so that we could have seen what he could have done for Ghana, because I still believe he had a lot to do. But unfortunately, like everybody, we all have a lot to do, but God in his own wisdom determines when we should cease. And I always take solace in the fact that the saying that the world is a stage, everybody comes to play his part, and when the curtains are drawn, your show is over, off you go. And so that is how we continue with it. So painful as it is, it was a necessary end that needed to come, and we just pray that he's resting in the bosom of the Lord with the good work that he did, and any bad things or negatives would be forgiven by Allah Almighty. That is what I can say.
His faith in Christ was not only that he wanted to live on earth forever. So when he pleased God and God took his life away, it pained all of us. But I think he was prepared for it. The reason I said this, that he was prepared for it, is that one day he asked me to come and give him communion. But since all the time we have been praying, he had never asked for communion. And so I went and gave him the communion 2 weeks after he passed away. I didn't know why he asked for communion. Incidentally, that Tuesday he passed away, I was with him. I went to pray with him. He didn't show any sign of passing away. When I went that Tuesday, the people I've been sending to pray with him were also, that week was their week of fasting and prayer. So I passed there. I passed the pastors to greet them. Then he sent for me. That he was waiting for me. So we went, Jude came and joined me. We went and prayed with him, and we left. Then about some 2-3 hours, the bodyguard called me that something happened to him, and they rushed him to 37 Medical Hospital. So we were all praying, and unfortunately, God took him away. So he is a peculiar person. I think we miss him seriously. He was humble. He didn't want to grab anything for himself. He was humble. He was still staying in his own house. so simple, very, very, very simple.
Things don't last long. In this life, most good people die young.
Indeed, the news of Professor Mills' death came as a bolt from the blue. Even those who disagreed with him were moody, and the whole nation was immersed in a climate of sorrow.
My wife and I always wonder, would he have gone that way he did if he hadn't gone into politics? He's my only friend. I would say that since he left, nobody has filled that vacuum for me. We will always wonder whether he would have gone if he hadn't gone into politics.
I do miss him a lot. He was a very funny person who cracked jokes. You will not believe some of the things that he would say with a straight face. Practical jokes all the time. And what I miss, one of the things that I miss a lot is he would call in a minister or chief director or somebody. Then he would call me to come and sit by him. Why do you want me to sit by? He said, because I know this guy is going to lie to me. So come and sit down and listen to those lies. And then the person will come in, talk and say, you see, I told you this person is going to lie. Then he will call the right people to come and give the right answers, and then he will call you back. This is what you told me. This is the right answer. Why did you lie to me? And quite a few times I saw people kneel down in front of him to apologize. And with that, you learn the lesson that you are coming to speak to the president of the country, and that you have to give the real truth. And it put some people on their toes, and it helped. And you dare not come and gossip about somebody. He will call the other person. Now tell me what you told me about that person. So you knew to come to him with the truth. So often in politics, people come and lie about so many things, so many people. And I learned a lot from that one. Yes.
A great oak had fallen. An exemplary leadership icon was no more. A father, a mentor, and a legal colossus could not walk again. Professor Mills had died. It's been 10 years since Professor Mills died, but a decade after his passing, his life continues to inspire many in Ghana and beyond. For some, the void he left can simply not be filled.
President of the Republic of Ghana, Professor John Evans Atta Mills. Though you are gone, your memory continue to live and live in our hearts. Till we meet again, rest in perfect peace.